Looking back at the month of April, it produced a few storms, but it also provided a lot of wet and cold. April was the 16th wettest and 14th coldest on record for the Twin Cities. Tracking all of that cold and rain is a New Hope man. He has been recording the weather from his home for 54 years. But there's also a need for new weather watchers, and Delane Cleveland has that story.
It's not too muddy here.
Everybody has a calling in life.
This is the rain gauge. It's 8-inch.
And for New Hope resident Steve Reckers, it didn't take long for him to discover that he has a passion for the weather.
I've been interested in it since I can remember, 4 or 5 years old probably. Always just very interested in temperature and how much snow was falling, how much rain was falling. This is a hygrometer for humidity.
Several times a day, he uses the equipment in his backyard to measure the temperature and the precipitation, which we got a lot of in April.
I reported 4.71 inches of rain, which is above normal about 1.25 inches. Yeah.
He knows that it's above normal because in a file cabinet in his basement,
it's a lot of stuff.
He has records dating back to the late 1950s.
Here's November.
And every day, he sends the data he compiles to the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, also known as CocoRAS.
He's really the weather historian of the Northwest Metro.
Michelle Margraf of the National Weather Service in Chanhassen leads the regional CocoRAS network.
Has the date on top.
And she's looking for more dedicated weather watchers like Steve to measure precipitation, snowfall, and snow depth.
These manual measurements are vital to our understanding of the climate, and we are simply grateful to everybody who would be willing to help share this information.
It's really been a hobby and really something that I really enjoy doing.
Steve is one of 20,000 people nationwide who take on this role. And while he receives no compensation for this hobby, he has the satisfaction of knowing that the data he collects can be put to good use. He hopes others follow in his footsteps.
It presents a pretty good picture of what's happening throughout the state, in terms of precipitation and so forth.
In New Hope, Delane Cleveland, CCX News.
The suburbs are taking a look at their ordinances governing food trucks. Brooklyn Park recently amended its zoning ordinance that also pertains to food trucks. The change will allow food truck operators to park their trucks outside of their homes on their property, just like boats and RVs can be parked in a driveway or on a concrete pad. Many food truck operators questioned the city about why they couldn't park outside of their homes when people could park RVs and boats on those spaces. People spoke on both sides of this issue in a meeting a few weeks ago, with people speaking against the change, mainly voicing concerns over safety and aesthetics. People are still not allowed to park these vehicles on the street outside of their homes. Golden Valley recently discussed minor changes to its ordinance. The Parks Department has requested the ordinance to be expanded because they are seeing other uses for food trucks. Instead, they'd like the language to read mobile vendors or vending operations instead of just food vendors. Food trucks are allowed in the city with varying restrictions based on zoning districts. The Planning Commission discussed this at an April 25th meeting. Hennepin Healthcare will be taking its new mobile truck around the metro to help families who might have a hard time coming into clinics.
We recognize with shelter-in-place orders, families being really nervous about the virus, we weren't really seeing kids in clinic like we had been. So as a consequence of that, immunization rates started to plummet.
So Hennepin Healthcare rolled out their pediatric mobile health clinic to address immunization rates. Because of the success of that program, they've expanded to run pop-up clinics, screenings, referrals, and other outreach services. They will continue to coordinate with school districts and communities to go where their services are needed. But you can expect to see the mobile health clinic in the northwest suburbs in the future. A shortage of lifeguards is causing the city of Maple Grove to make changes to its city code. Maple Grove will now allow swimming without the presence of lifeguards at Weaver Lake Beach. The change was made at this week's city council meeting. The city did research and they found that many community beach operations throughout the metro either have limited or no lifeguards on duty. According to city documents, guarding the community center pools would take priority over the beach. This week, an army of volunteers set out to make significant improvements to a ball field in Brooklyn Park. The Minnesota Twins teamed up with the Toro Foundation to spearhead efforts to revitalize Northwoods Park. More than 125 volunteers signed up to help, including TC Bear. The work included improving the pitching mound and making soil improvements to help the grass. It was actually the Twins that reached out to Brooklyn Park to determine what field needed work, and that's how Northwoods Park was picked.
We want to make sure that kids keep playing baseball and softball because of the life lessons that they can learn, and we want them to come and have fun. It's been a long 2 years of the pandemic, and making sure that kids have a safe place to play is what we're all about.
The Toro Foundation and the Twins Community Fund each donated $10,000 to Brooklyn Park's recreation and park programs. Construction has also started back up this spring on the preservation and revitalization of Graeser Park in Robbinsdale. MnDOT started a preservation project here back in 2020. This week, a contractor came back to complete the work that was started last year. This includes completing 10 picnic tables and the beehive restoration and repairing erosion on the east end of the rock garden. The beehive will be restored, but you will not be able to light a fire in it like people did decades ago.
The problem in the past is that people built fires in there that were really too big, and the fires were too hot and they damaged the stones. And so to be sure that nobody's going to have fires in there, and of course you can't let little fires happen unless big fires are possible, so they're going to be installing heavy woven wire panels closing off the fire oven openings.
There will be dome covers on the beehive so airflow can still move through it. Crews will be back again in 2023 for some additional work on safety and accessibility at Graeser Park.
We are now into May and the school year is winding down. Seniors from local schools will be moving on, but so will some coaches and administrators who have put a lot of time into athletics in the area. In this week's CCX Sports Spotlight, Jay Wilcox catches up with Hopkins Activities Director Dan Johnson.
For Dan Johnson, it's been a great ride, but it's also the right time to step away.
All of my elders in this business and my older siblings who are all retired, said, when it's time, you'll know.
Johnson is retiring after 23 years as Hopkins Activities Director in June.
I've been doing this a long time, and I think we're in a situation where we're in a little bit of transition, and it's a good time for us to have some new ideas and some new energy come in and kind of take this and run with it.
Being an athletic or activities director was never Dan's long-term goal. He was a baseball coach at the start, and he thought that was his destiny.
When I first started in this business in Texas, I was down there, and all I wanted to do was coach baseball, and of course in Texas you coach football too. So I did that for several years, and I became a head football coach. So I was both head football and head baseball, and about 3 months later, our AD left to go take a college basketball job, and he said, maybe you want to do this. And I said, I don't think so.
After stops at the high school and college level in a few states, Aberdeen, South Dakota native Johnson was hired as the Hopkins baseball coach in 1996. After 3 seasons as Royals coach, including a state tournament appearance in 1997, the AD position opened up at the school and Dan was hired. He's worked with some very good coaches who also appreciated his role.
I think Dan has a great style of leadership. I don't think he gets too excited about the highs and too bummed about the lows. I think he's really steady. But I think it's a tough job as an administrator that if he had to make a tough decision, he certainly didn't shy away from that.
He brought a lot of passion and confidence, and he just backed his coaches 100%. And when your athletic director has been a coach and actually walked the sidelines or the ball field, you feel you have something in common with him then.
He'd come to the games and really root the Royals on and ask how things are doing and talk to our assistant coaches and talk to our players. And I think he does that across the board, and not only with sports but with the other activities as well. And I know that's taken a lot of time out. He's had a lot of late nights, but Dan has really been a Royal through and through.
Johnson, like most in high school athletics, acknowledges that parents have become a lot more involved in recent years and expect to have more say in things.
There's a lot of interaction between parents and coaches that sometimes isn't real comfortable. Like I said, I don't think they're bad people, and I don't think they're horrible for asking questions or having expectations. I think the hard part is, at some point you have to let your child have that relationship with the coach.
He is retiring from the Hopkins district, but Dan won't stop working entirely.
I'm going to be the executive director of the Minnesota Interscholastic Activities Administrators. And this is our state association. We have about 440 members. My role is to kind of oversee the entire state and the programs with our state conference and our continuing education and our participation at the national conference and the new ADs workshop and working with league staff on that as well, obviously.
The job of an activities director isn't all fun and games. Dan Johnson's enjoyed his time as Royals AD, but there are parts he won't miss as he gets set for the next chapter.
A lot of my colleagues say, I could do this job if it just wasn't for the nights. And I'm the exact opposite. I could do this job if it wasn't for all of the paperwork and the bureaucracy and all of that kind of thing. I could stay at games every night of the week. It's watching the kids perform is really where that energy comes from and where the fun is.
That was Jay Wilcox reporting. Dan Johnson will turn 61 later this month, and we wish him well in retirement. More CCX News after this.